And Mark, you went second with Leclerc.
Yeah, I don't think it was even close. It was either first or second for me. And I think that car was nowhere near a front row car. He put it on the front row 6 times or 7 times, including a pole. Monaco, he was absolutely mind-blowing. Through to back. And, you see afterwards the GPS, it shows the gears as well as the speed. And apparently when the McLaren drivers looked at that, Norris sort of said to Piastri, said, "Jesus, could you do that?" And Piastri said, "I think you should try it first." It's just absolutely, beyond anybody's imagination that it was possible to do that. No, he's dragging that car in places it's got absolutely no business being. That was a dog of a Ferrari this year. And Hamilton joined at a very unfortunate time. But when Hamilton says, "I don't know how he's doing this," he's just echoing what people like Sebastian Vettel have been saying as well. Vettel, remember, said he is the most talented teammate I have ever had. He's unbelievably good. He's just been ill-served by a team for the last however many years, 7 years. He's just a multiple world champion that isn't getting his car.
Charles Leclerc has had a decent start to the 2026 season. He's picked up a couple of podiums in the first 4 races. He's currently 3rd in the championship, and he's been one of the top drivers in F1 once again. Despite all of that, what if I told you that the 2026 season, until now, it has been a complete nightmare for Charles Leclerc? Let me explain. To do that, first of all, let's take a look at the 2026 season from Charles Leclerc's point of view. So coming into the 2026 season, Charles Leclerc will be racing with Ferrari for 8th consecutive year. Yep, that's 8 years he's been racing for the Italian team. And in these 8 years, he's yet to fight for the championship even once. During this time, he has seen Max Verstappen win 4 consecutive world championships. He's seen Lando Norris win the championship last year. And this year, he is looking at George Russell and Kimi Antonelli fighting for the championship. All these drivers that I mentioned, these are the drivers that Leclerc has grown up with. He's raced with all of them, so he more or less knows how good or bad they are and where he stands against them. So it is probably a source of frustration for him as well. And this was something that became a bit visible in 2025. And it was during this time that Charles Leclerc revealed that his future commitment with Ferrari, it will ideally depend on where the Ferrari project is in 2026. So Charles Leclerc has an exit clause in place for this year. And if he decides that the current project, it's not the one that can help him win the championship in the short run, he's probably not going to commit his future and might take his services elsewhere. With this being the foundational position where Charles Leclerc was at the start of the year, I'll divide the rest of the video in 3 segments. First, what Charles Leclerc would have wanted. Secondly, what he's currently going through in terms of the 2026 season. And finally, why this is a complete nightmare for him. So first of all, let's take a look at what Charles Leclerc would have ideally wanted from 2026. The ideal scenario, the best possible case for Leclerc would have been that Ferrari nails the 2026 regulations. Now Ferrari, it's been a while since the team has nailed the technical regulations. Ever since the Michael Schumacher days, Ferrari has struggled to be the benchmark on the current grid. Now while that is the case for Charles Leclerc, the ideal scenario would have been that Ferrari nails these regulations so that he can exploit the car and fight for the championship for the very first time. That way, his childhood dream would have been accomplished, and winning a championship with Ferrari is a different kind of legacy that you could actually put together. If, however, Ferrari was not going to nail the regulations, the other scenario that Charles Leclerc would have hoped for was the one where a pecking order emerges early in the year. Now, what ideally happens when we have a new set of regulations is that a certain pecking order emerges. So in that way, you can take a look at different projects that are there and maybe pick and choose the ones that are more promising. So in case we saw Aston Martin make a huge jump in 2026, Charles Leclerc would have been interested in making a move to Aston Martin, or maybe a Williams. If Williams had made a huge jump from 2025 to 2026, maybe that team could have piqued Charles Leclerc's interest. So in essence, Ferrari had not nailed the 2026 regulations, and Charles Leclerc would have been forced to think about a move away from the Italian team. He would have hoped that there was a project that was promising and that was on the path toward the top of F1, so that Charles could potentially maneuver something similar to what Lewis Hamilton did when he moved from McLaren to Mercedes. Now, While this is what Charles Leclerc would have hoped for, I think it is safe to say that neither of these scenarios have essentially happened. In 2026, we are looking at a scenario where Ferrari is essentially where it has been since 2019. If we look at Ferrari's 2026 season, it is a promising project, but it is not a project that is the benchmark in F1. It is quite clearly got a very strong chassis, but the power unit, it is too far behind. As a result, Ferrari is going to be a perennial podium contender, as it seems right now, but will it be able to fight for wins and maybe championship in 2026? I think it is too big a stretch to hope that Charles Leclerc would be able to accomplish that with the current status of the project. At the same time, however, the flip side is also not clear. So for Charles Leclerc, even if you look at a scenario where Ferrari is not the benchmark, we do not have a set pecking order that has emerged. Aston Martin, it has tanked. The team is nowhere. Williams, on the other hand, it has also suffered a setback. So even that team, it's not really a team that's worth going to at this point. And then if you look at the top 4 traditional teams, we don't really have a set picking order either. McLaren started the season arguably as the 4th fastest car. By Miami, which is the 4th race, it was fighting Mercedes for the race win. So all in all, what would have ideally been the expectation for Charles Leclerc, they've not really materialized. Finally, let's talk about why this has been a complete nightmare for Charles Leclerc. The reason why the time is of the essence for Charles Leclerc is because he's getting closer and closer to 30 years of age. He's not a young driver anymore. He's not someone who can continue to commit multiple years to a project where he might or might not end up winning. That is something that he cannot gamble in his career now, because unlike many of his contemporaries who have fought for the championship and who have even achieved a decent amount of success, Charles Leclerc has been unable to do that. For him, time is of the essence. So this is why he finds himself in a position where either way he has to take a gamble when it comes to his future. If he sticks with Ferrari, it is a major gamble, because if you look at Ferrari's track record since 2019, when he's been a part of the team, Ferrari has continued to be what it is right now. A strong front-running team that is going to fight for the podiums, pick up occasional wins, but will that team be able to win championships and build a car that's going to be the benchmark on the grid? The answer to that is no. So that's the problem that he faces. So if Charles Leclerc commits to Ferrari once again, that's a leap of faith. And he has been taking the leap of faith since 2019. That's 8 years that Ferrari has failed him. So does committing his future to Ferrari make sense? Maybe, maybe not. But that's the call that he has to make. On the other hand, if he thinks about leaving Ferrari, the problem is, what are his options? Mercedes is not an option. They already have their drivers in place. And even if a George or a Kimi is moved, they would be moved only and only for Max Verstappen. Then you have McLaren. And maybe there's an option that Charles Leclerc ends up replacing an Oscar Piastri for some reason if he decides to move. But that is the only scenario. Then Red Bull, not an option. Aston Martin, not an option. The same is the case with Williams. Even that is not an option. So overall, Charles Leclerc ends up in a scenario where whatever call he makes in his career, it's going to be a gamble. And ideally, such a gamble a young driver can make. A young driver like an Ollie Bearman or a Kimi Antonelli, they can gamble and put multiple years into a long-term project. And Ollie Bearman today, he can move to an Audi and spend 2 to 3 years building the project. That's the luxury that Charles Leclerc does not have right now. And that is why the 2026 season, it is a complete nightmare for him. This was the year where he would have hoped that he would finally have the right direction for his career, and he's part of a project with which he's comfortable and confident in. Unfortunately, the scenario that he faces, it's essentially a gamble. If he sticks with Ferrari, it's a gamble because Ferrari has been a failure, let's be honest. At the same time, if he moves to another team, that's a gamble as well. So yeah, overall, not the best place to be in for Leclerc. We'll see how he responds. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.